Remember when the teacher wheeled in the cart into your classroom that had the TV or a film projector on it? You knew that was going to be a good day at school. So I started kindergarten in 1974. That is a lifetime ago, literally. And things were a lot different in the 70s when it came to being a child in grade school. First of all, the school buildings were pretty bare bones. There were tile floors, there were cinder block walls, there was no air conditioning, there were heavy metal and wood desks that you open up and put your stuff in. All of the playground equipment was typically on cement. So basically, there were a lot fewer safety nets when it came to protecting us kids. But us Gen X kids, we were pretty tough. So here's what it was like. So let's go back. It's August. It's time to go back to school shopping. So when you are a grade schooler in the 70s, these are the things that we bought for our back to school shopping. So my mom usually took me to a store like Kmart, and we went down all the aisles and I picked out my brand new set of crayons, the big box that had the sharpener in the back. We picked up folders, paper, scissors, glue, a ruler, number 2 pencils, and then came the lunchbox aisle. So back then, most of the lunchboxes were metal. I recently saw a comedian on YouTube who was talking about kids that went to school in the 70s and how their lunchboxes would start to rust out and how leave it to us to eat our lunch out of a rusty metal box. Those lunchboxes also had a big plastic thermos. I think I usually had milk in the thermos, which, ugh, but that's what I had. So anyway, going back to school supply shopping, we get all the things, but I do want to point out that at one point in time, a new invention came out, and it was called the Trapper Keeper. Well, I had a red Trapper Keeper, and it had all the cool folders where the folder flap was at a diagonal. It had your pencil or pen case in it. It had the 3-ring binder, but instead of it being metal, it was plastic. And anyway, I thought it was the greatest invention ever, and I loved my red Trapper Keeper. Okay, back to school shopping is done. Oh, wait, I forgot the clothes. Okay, I never got excited about back to school clothes shopping, and I was such a tomboy that I did not want to wear dresses or anything like that. So here is what my back to school wardrobe consisted of: corduroys, jeans, Sears Winter 2 tennis shoes, and then when we could afford it, I got some Nike shoes. For winter, I begged and begged my parents for a pair of moon boots. I also wanted painter's pants. I don't know if you remember painter's pants back in the 70s for grade school, but they were an off-white, like Oshkosh Bagosh pants that had lots of loops on them and extra pockets because that's what people who painted houses wore, apparently. And apparently, this was a trend. I also had a cool set of overalls. I had a cool set of rainbow Mork and Mindy suspenders. Of course, I had my striped tube socks and the ever popular iron-on patch t-shirts. So back then you could buy t-shirts that had iron-on patches on them already, like in some iridescent rainbow color, and it said words. But if you didn't go buy them that way, you could buy the patches separately, and your mom could iron on those patches. I should also note that I was so hard on my jeans that my mom always had to iron on or sew patches on the knees of my jeans as well. So that's a whole nother story. All right, time to go to school. We're at school. It's sometime in the 70s. Here's what I'm learning. I'm learning that we can't talk in class unless called on. I'm seeing green chalkboards, and the sound of the chalk writing on the board is like nails going down that chalkboard. I'm seeing one of those devices that you put like 6 pieces of chalk in and they line up, and then the teacher will take it and move it across the chalkboard to create lines. So for example, if you were writing music, this is something you could use. But in this case, this was a way for us to learn how to write in cursive or how for the teacher to demonstrate how to write in cursive. And we did have to learn how to write in cursive, and we had to be perfect about it. Remember the small letter Q in cursive? That was a hard one to get. And teachers didn't hold back on discipline. Now, I didn't go to a school where the teachers would hit you with a paddle or anything like that. But I do remember the teachers were pretty strict, and they would not hesitate to embarrass a child if the child was acting up. I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in trouble that often, and if I did, it was just because I was talking out of turn. But I do remember having a few male grade school teachers that I was kind of scared of because they did not mess around. All right, let's talk gym class. When you are an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid in the 70s and you go to a public grade school in the United States, here's what you could expect. So the gyms were small, and we had these thin mats. The mats were used to do I don't even know what. All I remember is we did sit-ups on them. However, I also remember the mats, which were not thick, by the way, were placed below a long rope attached to the ceiling of the gym. And one of the gym class things that we were supposed to do was to climb this rope all the way to the top, which is probably 15 feet maybe, I'm guessing, maybe even more. Now, typically girls could not do this. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at all. I would literally hang onto the rope and hang there for 5 seconds, and that was it. Now, the boys, they could go, and some of the boys could go all the way to the top. But again, all we had was that thin mat at the bottom, so if they fell, it would have been a catastrophe. Like I said, we did not have safety nets. Another strange gym class activity that I remember was there were these pegboards mounted to the wall up high, so you had to be like lifted or climb up on this little thing to even reach the pegs. And then you had to hang on to the pegs and continue to remove the peg and climb up and up and up until you got to the top. Again, there was probably one of those thin mats underneath. I couldn't do that either. The boys could do it. So now that I think about it, I think those gym classes were pretty rigged towards the guys in terms of success. And us girls, we were just kind of left out in the cold. We were kind of shamed because we couldn't do any of these things. Ugh, what strange memories. Another thing I remember is that we had to start each day standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I actually think that's pretty cool. I have no idea if that happens today, but again, back in the 70s, that is something we did. I remember our music class consisted of a huge box full of these musical toys and instruments. There were triangle bells. I remember we had to learn to play the recorder, that like weird flute-like thing. I remember there were wooden blocks. And there were these like xylophone bells that each note was an individual bell. And then we had these songbooks, and I don't remember much, but I remember we learned The Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. All right, let's talk about recess. So for recess, what to do at recess? The best recess was usually around the lunchtime, and it was probably 30 minutes long, which is a long time when you are in grade school. So sometimes I would play one of the many sports I mentioned. Other times we had these swings called the pumper swings, and they were these metal swings that were enclosed, and you sat in them and your legs straddled this metal bar, and then you had these handlebars that you'd pump like this. And the more you did it, the more speed you got and the higher you went. And there was a period of time when me and this boy, I think his name was Steve, we would always run out to the pumper swings at that long recess break, and we would swing the whole time. And you know what? It was glorious. I mean, we would laugh, the wind was in our hair. How can something so simple like swinging on pumper swings be so fun? These are the times I really miss being a little kid. All right, school's over. It's time to go home. So I'm sure I walked home. I know I walked home quite a bit. I think when I was really young, I actually took the bus, the school bus, which, again, I hardly have any memory of. But nonetheless, we get home. We let ourselves in because our parents are working. And what do? We usually change our clothes into our play clothes if we're not already in them for some reason. And we immediately turn on the TV, we get a snack, we watch reruns of Gilligan's Island or The Brady Bunch or something like that. And we have probably 2.5 hours to kill before our parents come home. But I remember thinking back, and I wasn't scared to be home alone. I had a brother that was 3 years younger than me, and I was supposed to be looking out for him. We didn't burn down the house. We didn't choke to death. We didn't fall. Nothing terrible happened. It all worked out. But I just can't imagine that being the norm in the present day. So these are all my fun memories or interesting memories of being in grade school in the 1970s. Let me know in the comments below if you have some interesting memories of going to grade school in the 70s. As always, my name is Noelle. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video.